and welcome to my channel, and this is the weekly wrap up for July the 22nd through the 28th, and I was also participating in the 7 and 7 readathon. This week was a pretty busy week. So yesterday morning I was up at the butt crack of dawn celebrating, or hoping to celebrate, which we end up get to do, celebrating my son's 3rd year on his summer swim team, in which they had divisionals and they won. So they are now the champions of their division for swim team. So big round of applause, hand clap for my kid. Love, love, love. He worked really, really hard all season long for the 9 weeks that they swim, and it really paid off. Him and his team, they worked together and they did the thing. Yes, they did. It was a hard charge, but they did it. So let's get into the books that I read, and then I'll talk about how I did for the challenge. So the first book I read last week was Dr. Fellactio by Stella, and this is a rom-com. I read it during 24 and 48. I give it 5 stars. I read it as an arc, and I loved this story. This story is, as I said, a rom-com. It's also a second chance love story. Your characters are Lexi and Chris, and they are college sweethearts, but fate is a bitch, and she had them separate right after college to sort of go on their own paths and journeys. And the thing with fate is that it always brings people back together, and you get to see their journey of how they came back together, and it's funny, but at the same time very touching, and I really, really enjoyed it. I loved all the secondary characters that were introduced in the story as well, and I really hope that some of those secondary characters get their own spin-off books because they're fun. And then, of course, some check-ins with Lexi and Chris. The next book I read was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. And I placed this in contemporary. I give it 4.5 to 5 stars. I listened to it on audiobook, and you guys, this book is a serious, slow burn of a book. It took me a long time to get into this story. This story is about Aiden, who is a defensive lineman for a football team here in the United States, but he is actually Canadian, and Vanessa is his personal assistant, who one day finally gets fed up and quits her job with Aiden. And this is sort of their journey of figuring out that they like each other. I mean, you pretty much know it right off the bat, the way they banter together, the way they're interacting with each other, that there is something there, that the chemistry's there, but it is such a slow burn, such a slow burn. It is a 16-hour audiobook, and of course I sped it up, so it took me less time, but yes. Once you get past Vanessa's nickname for Aiden, which is the big man, I think you can probably get into it. There are some other issues that go along in this book that really grab your heartstrings, and there are definitely some trigger warnings, I believe. Yes, for possible abuse and some other things as well. So just be careful with that, but it's a slow burn romance that in the end is worth it. The next book I read was Unforgiven, Sins and Secrets #2 by Willow. Whew, so this is a dark romance, and I give this one 4 stars. I gave the first book 5 stars, I believe it was, or 4.5 to 5 stars, and I listened to this on audiobook. So this is the conclusion of Julia and Mason's story. In the first book, I absolutely loved Mason. I loved how alpha male he was, how swoony he was, and in this book, he really shows his dark side, and it really boggled my mind and like flipped my head on end with his switch, because it just switches up like right there, and you're just like, wow. And then there's some twists and turns and things like that that go on in the story. I still don't think Julia is as strong of a character as I wanted her to be, but the dynamic between the two of them was just, it was there, but at the same time it kind of threw me off because of all the extra that came along with it. So I was a little on edge. In the first review for the first book, I mentioned that each chapter started off with a poem because Julia is a poet, and she writes books and things like that, which is why this is the second book in the series of duets, because she continues on with the side character stories later on in the series. Makes me wonder just a little bit if I want to keep going in the series or not. The next book that I read was The Backstagers, Volume 1 by James Tynion. And I read this. It's a graphic novel, as you guys know. I showed you. It's a short one, and I was left feeling very on edge about this, wanting sort of my hours back that I spent to read it. I only give it 3.5 stars, and this follows Jory. You're introduced to him. He's going to an all-male school now, and he needs, his mother encourages him to join a club after school because she can't pick him up, I believe it is. And he decides to go to the drama club and gets in with the Backstagers. These are the guys that, or the crew that takes care of the props and everything like that. Then there's some weird fantasy stuff that goes along with the tunnels that are underneath the school, and there's a mystery, and I just didn't get it. Maybe it's because I'm too old to get it. I don't know. My son, although he got this and was like, he saw me reading it and was like, hey mom, can I read that after you're done? I was like, yep, you sure can, because I own this copy. So I'm kind of happy about that he gets to read a book. And there's nothing derogatory in or anything like that. So definitely if you have a 10-year-old or above, it's a good story for them to read. I don't know what he would get out of it. At this point, I might need to get the rest of the volumes, or if there's other volumes that are out, I might need to get those, and maybe there's more story to hear to this. It does touch on being acceptable or accepting your friends as they are with their flaws, so I definitely appreciate that and think that it's a good lesson for him to learn, not bullying and things like that, so that's a good thing. There are some undertones to this that you don't necessarily see unless you're really looking for them, so I'm not even going to really mention them, but I liked it. He liked it. My son liked it so much that he decided to do some drawings, and he requested that I show you guys his drawings. And these are all by hand, his drawings that he did. And I'm super proud of him because he just did them by sight. He didn't like trace them or anything like that. And these are just the characters from the story. And I think they're amazing. I mean, I was like, wow, you did this on your own. And I think they're adorable. Just adorable. My kid, you never know. You might see his name on a book one day. There you go, as an illustrator. Then the next book that I read was The Bells #1 by Dhonielle Clayton, and I placed this book in fantasy. I give it 4 stars. I listened to it on audiobook. I was going to listen to it for Booktubeathon. However, I needed to turn it in or turn it back over, and I didn't want to miss out and lose one of my credits for my Hoopla Digital, so I just went ahead and read it. And this book is by a Black author, and this is Camilla's story. I enjoyed this story, but I didn't see a whole lot of originality in it. I love the color, the use of color from this book. Camilla is this supposed goddess that was born into society where they have magical powers, and everyone else in society is gray, but the Bells are a special sort of race that is in full color, and they have the magic and the powers to give and alter others in life. And this is her story where she wants to be the favorite, and what happens when being the favorite is not all that's cracked up to be. And then there's some mystery. There is an unnecessary love triangle that really just kind of irked me in it, and things like that, but I do sort of want to read how this is going to go for the next book, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. The next book I read was Who Were Before by Leah Mercer, and this I have to put in the women's fiction completely into women's fiction, not contemporary. There is no romance in this book whatsoever. I mean, at least I didn't find any romance, the typical sort of definition of romance. I give this book 3.5 stars. I listened to it on audiobook, and this follows Zoe and Edward. Both of them are sort of going through some things after a very tragic event that happens to them. Zoe and Edward are married, and the story jumps back and forth. You find out in the beginning what the tragedy is, and then you find out they go to Paris for a holiday, and then the story jumps back and forth. That leads you up to what exactly happened for this tragedy to be caused. Then, by the end, the tragedy sort of just gets brushed over for me. I wanted a little more explanation, I guess you could say, from the tragedy, and it just fell kind of flat for me. With the whole back and forth and Edward and his actions, I just wanted to, like, knock him out sometimes. He was not a likable character. Neither was Zoe, for that matter. I just didn't connect with these characters at all. And then the final book that I read last week was Foul Language. The Struggle is Real. I didn't bring it down here, by Brian Gordon, but this is a graphic novel as well. It's another parenting book that I absolutely adored. Lots of little snippet comics about parenting and the joys of parenthood and dealing with your kids. I give this one 4 stars. It's a graphic novel, like I said, and it's about parenting. It's funny, it's light, it was just what I needed. Snap through. It's only like 100, maybe 120 pages or something like that, but it was real easy read and things like that. That's what I read last week. The things that qualified for the 7 in 7 readathon, because I stopped sort of doing the challenges. The challenges were optional. The whole point for last week was to read 7 things in 7 days, and I did that. If you guys were counting, I did read 7 books last week, or 7 things last week. But for the categories, I did complete the yellow on the cover category by reading The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, and I read something outside of my normal comfort zone, which was The Backstagers by James Tynion IV. The other challenges I did not complete. So, have you read any of those books that I just mentioned? What did you think about them as you were reading them? Let me know down in the comments. If you need me to elaborate on any of the books, please let me know which ones you want to know a little bit more about down in the comments, or you can always check out my Goodreads page, which is down in the description box, so you guys can check out the actual Goodreads review for it if you want to read that. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, there is a feedback form down in the description box so you guys can help me improve my channel. Thank you for watching, and we will see you guys later.